You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14, and today Kansas lawmakers look to put the finishing touches on the state's redistricting map.
Let's get a little bit of a warm-up now that we're starting to see some sunlight, because we have freeze warnings in effect for the first day of April. We'll have the latest from the Skywatch Weather Center.
Also, we'll introduce you to a third grader who's being hailed as a hero. All that and more coming up.
The four states' most watched news starts now.
Thanks for joining us for the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. I'm Chris Warner. We begin this morning with breaking news overnight. A person of interest in a Joplin homicide case is dead. Just after 10 last night, Joplin police surrounded a home at 2201 South Empire. Police had received a tip that a person of interest was in a homicide case was at this home. After the suspect refused to leave the home, SWAT was called in just after 11. SWAT officers tried to get the person to come out of the home, and just before 1 this morning, smoke was visible from the house, which shortly after turned into flames. The fire department was called, and after the fire was put out, they found the body of a male in the attic space. Captain Davis with JPD says they believe they heard a gunshot just before the fire began. This was the person of interest in a homicide case just 6 blocks away at 2201 South Jackson. The name of the suspect and the victim in yesterday's case have not been released. Kansas lawmakers have given final approval to a redistricting measure. It's likely to preserve Republican supermajorities in the legislature while possibly moving the state school board to the right. The measure goes next to Governor Kelly, and she said earlier this week that she thinks lawmakers did a good job on legislative redistricting. Republicans currently have majorities of both the Senate, House, and school board. Today marks the beginning of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So on Thursday, sexual assault nurse examiners at Freeman Health System put out some facts and prevention tips. They say data shows rape and sexual assault are the most underreported crimes in the U.S. The nurses also brought up the importance of consent using the acronym FRIES, which stands for Freely Given, Reversible, Informed, Enthusiastic, and Specific.
Forth, and even after there's been an incident of a sexual assault, sometimes the perpetrator will text and try to dissuade them or talk, make excuses, or, so the texting thing is also a factor.
Theme for this year's Sexual Assault Awareness Month is building safe online spaces together. Today, Ukrainian and Russian negotiators are set to resume talks virtually online. The two sides have made little progress in ending the war. Even establishing temporary ceasefires to deliver humanitarian aid has proved difficult. Bradley Blackburn has details about the latest attempts to help the besieged city of Mariupol.
Russia's assault on the port city of Mariupol continued Thursday. Ukraine's deputy prime minister says Russian forces seized 14 tons of food and medical supplies and prevented residents from fleeing the violence. Today, a team from the International Committee of the Red Cross will try to enter the city with humanitarian aid and help with evacuations. Julian Lairson is the Deputy Director of Operations.
For the time being, we have the agreement at the top level. Now we are working on getting the agreement at the bottom, the field level.
Russia says it will reopen a corridor at the behest of France and Germany, but Lairson says there are a lot of unknowns.
You will use that road, you will pass by that checkpoint. The phone number you should use is this one, and we need to make sure that that works.
Russia has tried to pound the city into submission. Ukraine estimates 90% of residential buildings are damaged. Last month, Victoria and her 2 children were sheltering in this theater as they waited for a corridor to open up. Despite the word children written outside in Russian, it was bombed. Everything fell on my daughter, she said. It was several minutes before the 2-year-old girl called out for her mother from under the rubble. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky insists Russian withdrawals from places like the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, which it has now handed back to the Ukrainians, is a military tactic as Russia regroups for more powerful attacks in the southeast. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News.
Ukraine's state power company says Russians left Chernobyl after soldiers received significant doses of radiation from digging trenches in the forest in the exclusion zone around the closed plant. That claim, though, has not been independently verified. Parsons, Kansas Police Department introduced a new member of the force, a canine named Morgan. Morgan's a 15-month-old female Labrador retriever trained in narcotics detection and tracking. Her handler is Officer Christian Smith. Officials say Morgan was paid for through a donation from a nonprofit group that also paid for her training. And we're at Pinch Lake. We want to take a quick second. Take a look at the Skywatch weather cam. It's 7:04 with sunrise, and it's up right now. Well, that's outside Television City. There, look at that. Sorry, we talked about it all through the KOAM morning show. That 7:04 was sunrise. It's 7:05. There's the sunrise, as promised. We've got more on that forecast here in just a little bit. Back to the other important things we got to tell you. And ancient Pompeii has a new guardian to watch over it. Spot, a four-legged robot dog, will inspect the ancient Italian city streets and tunnels to identify structural issues. The robot, designed by U.S. firm Boston Dynamics, patrol Pompeii at nighttime to inspect the smallest of spaces and gather data for planning interventions to fix safety and structural issues. Equipped with a 360-degree camera, Spot will also protect the ancient city streets from illegal relic hunters who cause structural issues to the ruins by digging tunnels. Pompeii will also have its own eye in the sky, a Leica BLK-2 flying laser scanner capable of autonomously conducting 3D scans of the ruins, helping Spot carry out its tasks.
Why is it anything that comes out of Boston Dynamics just scares me instantly, and I feel like it's going to come out of a sci-fi 3D movie and like attack me in the studio?
Because it's probably what's going to happen.
You're right.
I mean,
why does it always have to be Boston Dynamics?
Well, because they're on it. I mean, RoboCop, it's going to be a thing at some point. Data from Star Trek,
is Peter Weller still with us? I don't know,
point.
before I say, Ron, is Peter Weller still with us? I think so.
Yeah, Peter Weller's still around.
I wanted to make sure. I've made the mistake before.
Well, Peter Weller's pretty flippin' cool too, you know. I mean, he's so RoboCop 1, RoboCop 2. Not bad. RoboCop 3, Peter Weller didn't even return for it. I mean, I watched it. I liked the storyline, but without Peter Weller, it just wasn't the same.
Listen, it's interesting you bring up sequels because we could make a list. Coming up here in just a little bit, we're going to be talking about the retirement of one Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
I heard a great top 5 list of Bruce Willis movies, if you're thinking about that at home.
Fifth Element for sure.
It's interesting. That's interesting.
What's wrong with the Fifth Element?
Well, the list that I heard was a little bit more specific. It was, you start at 5, and then you work your way 4, 3, 2, so 2 is going to be Die Harder, and then number 1, Die Hard. Die Hard 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, Michael. Up next, Emily Frankowski from Connect to Culture, culturing us as she heads back to the studio, to tell us about area events for National Poverty Month. We are grateful to have her here. Later, as Michael mentioned, Bruce Willis announces untimely retirement due to a condition known as aphasia. We'll tell you more about that when we come back. You're watching the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Bruce Willis is stepping away from acting after being diagnosed with aphasia, a condition that affects about 1 million people in the U.S. Mandy Gaither has more on how aphasia impacts a person's life.
A heartbreaking announcement made by the family of a well-known actor, Bruce Willis, stepping away from the career that has meant so much to him after being diagnosed with aphasia.
Aphasia is the inability to communicate or difficulty using our language to speak, to read, write, or simply comprehend or understand what people are saying.
Dr. Babek Tusi, a neurologist specialist at Cleveland Clinic, says aphasia can happen suddenly after a stroke or brain injury. He says people with this type tend to respond well to speech and language therapy, but the other progressive type of this disease causes a gradual deterioration of brain tissue. Tusi says there's no cure and no medication that treats it.
It's all about finding new normal in communication day-to-day activities.
Tusi says early symptoms include trouble finding words, which gets more common, substituting or making up words, talking around words, using abnormally short phrases, and difficulty reading and writing.
Not being able to express yourself efficiently sometimes make you feel prisoned.
Tusi says aphasia can also cause frustration and stress in the patient, which is why it's important for them to work on new strategies to communicate.
Most people who develop aphasia are middle-aged and older, but it can happen to anyone. National Aphasia Association says nearly 180,000 Americans are diagnosed with it each year. The world's longest roller coaster just got even longer. Now, since 1979, the Beast at Cincinnati, Ohio's Kings Island Amusement Park has held the Guinness World Record for the world's longest roller coaster. The ride lasts over 4 minutes. It was 7,359 feet long, at least that was until the park did some off-season retracking work, which an extra 2 feet of total track length were added onto the wooden behemoth. That means after holding onto its length laurels for a lengthy 42 years straight at a newly revised 7,361 feet, the Beast will end up breaking its own world record when it reopens in May.
It is a rite of passage for many a child who grows up in the Midwest, especially for people that grow up in the state of Ohio, because you're either a Cedar Point kid or you're a Kings Island kid. I was a Kings Island kid, and the rite of passage being when you finally get to the height that you qualify to get on the Beast, do you have the guts to go through it?
See, I have a very sad story. I had never ever in my life ridden a roller coaster until our 1-year wedding anniversary.
What prompted you to do it then?
Well, my wife Amber had been to Worlds of Fun dozens of times. So this is the trade-off, by the way. I had family in Kansas City, so I'd actually been into Kansas City I don't know how many times. She'd been to Worlds of Fun a number of times. Well, she'd never actually gone into Kansas City. So as the trade-off, I took her into the city.
How cool.
And we went downtown. She saw all this cool stuff. She fell in love with it. And then she took me to Worlds of Fun. And I'm going to tell you right now, I have never been more terrified of anything in my life.
Understandable also too, because then you start to get into that fear. You're an adult, and I think we're a little bit more fearless when we're children.
I think so, because I mean, I got on and I have a terrible fear of heights. Now, there was one roller coaster, the Prowler. It wasn't so bad because it kind of had like a fence around it, and I couldn't really see how high I was. But then she put me on the Patriot, where you're just dangling there.
Right.
And I'm telling you, this is a true story. There's this thing that comes down over you, like a little harness. I was holding on to it like this for dear life, and it just kept going up higher and higher. And I'm a little ashamed to admit it, but honest to goodness, my fear of heights was ridiculous. I was in tears by the time we got to the top of this thing.
It's okay.
And I'm just like, I'm going to die.
So,
this is it. I'm going to die right here, right now. This is over.
This does beg the question, though, since you conquered your fear and you were able to do it, have you ever been on any more roller coasters since then? No.
And I don't really plan on it. The thing is, I rode the Patriot a dozen times while we were there, and it scared the living crap out of me every single time.
I will not be taking you to Kings Island for you and I to ride the Beast together.
Because I'll just sit there at the food stand and get fat and sassy, and you can go ride all the roller coasters. So that's all I'm good for.
Taking me back to my childhood. As Chris said earlier, 7:04 was our magic time for sunrise over Joplin, and there we are, live look facing off to the north-northeast over 7th and Range Line. Skywatch Storm Tracker, we are clear as can be. We are cold for the first day of April. Freeze warnings lasting until 9 o'clock this morning as we still await our warm-up. Chanute, our only location that's above the freezing mark at 33 degrees, 31 in Joplin. Let's roll 28 in Pittsburgh and in Miami. Eventually up into the 60s, though, this afternoon. It'll be a great afternoon. A whole lot of sunshine. Low cloud increase for tonight, and then as we approach sunset, a little scattered rain. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it change your plans. Out by mid-Saturday morning, and then Saturday we're right back into the 60s. Great Saturday afternoon and evening with a little bit additional rainfall, and Sunday is going to be great too. Additional rainfall really won't kick in until late Sunday afternoon, early evening. And welcome back to the KOAM Morning News. Earlier, we were fortunate enough to be joined by our good friend Emily Frankowski. She runs Connect to Culture in Joplin, and we talked about an upcoming concert that's tomorrow, as a matter of fact. It's Las Cafeteras there, and like Emily said, I just want to reiterate, she said make sure you check the website to see if that concert's going to be inside or outside. And she returns. Emily, thank you for your time this morning.
Yes.
And the reason I asked Emily to come back is Connect to Culture is so integral in bringing us arts and culture, and it just so happens that it's National Poetry Month. And Emily has put together an entire slew of events to put poetry first and foremost. And I want to start with coming up here. It's actually going to be a couple of weeks from now, but it's Open Mic Poetry Night. This sounds like a great way to, number one, if you want to try out some poetry, or maybe if you are just interested in seeing what other people have to offer. Kind of tell us how this all came to fruition.
Yeah, so a few years ago, Connect to Culture, Post Our Library, and Pubhound Press, a local publishing company, got together and decided we need a collective celebration of poetry in National Poetry Month. So we go out, we collect all of these different events from other organizations that are having poetry-centric events going on in April, and we, kind of do a little bit more marketing for all of them. But this Open Mic Poetry Night was kind of born out of the idea that many people love poetry, but aren't poets themselves. And many local poets don't have a place to, share their poetry. So this is an event for all types of poetry people who write poetry, people who love poetry. You can come and recite a poem of your own or a poem that you really love. And so it really brings just poetry lovers together, and it's a very, casual atmosphere. It is a 21 plus event because it is a wine and beer share kind of event. So it is at Joplin Empire Market. We're just so fortunate to be able to host it there. They gift us the space, and it is free and open to the public. So basically you walk in the door, you put your name down on a list of, the schedule for the night, and you get to recite.
And then there's a similar one that comes up, that is Friday the 15th. And then there's a similar one on Tuesday, the 18th, at the Joplin Avenue Coffee Company. Kind of similar in nature, I would think. Okay.
Yes,
also,
theirs is a little different, just that there are local poets that perform before, and then there's a shorter open mic at the end.
Sure. And so once again, that's going to take place on Friday, April 15th, and then the second one on Tuesday, April the 18th. And Emily does you guys have such a marvelous website. It's connecttoculture.org is all you have to do is go there, and Emily has the complete calendar with details on it as well. This looks like something that the kiddos would be interested in coming up on Saturday the 16th at the Joplin Public Library. It's called the Poetry Hunt. What exactly does that entail?
Yes, so basically the Joplin Public Library and Post Our Library are creating these eggs that have poems inside them. They'll be scattered throughout the Joplin Public Library, so you might just find one and find yourself with a new poem.
And not only that, make sure that you get the kids involved with that, because that's kind of an interesting way to get them started at a very young age, and maybe find a poetry lover in the house that didn't really know much about it. You have an event called 1,000 Words, and I found this really interesting because that's all it's called. It's one of those that leaves me pining for more. What exactly is 1,000 Words about?
So 1,000 Words is an event the Spiva Center for the Arts puts on, and that one there's a great exhibit going on in Spiva right now called Photo Spiva, where there's photographs from around the world, some of the best that are chosen and juried into this exhibit. Writers, poets, they come to the exhibit, they experience all these photographs, pick one, and are inspired by it and create a poem or prose and recite it at this event, which is April 19th. So after they recite it, it's recorded, placed into a QR code, and next to the photo that they, were inspired by. So people that come and visit the exhibit can scan that code and listen to it later as well. That is tremendous.
I have to add, okay, is this an idea that you've seen along the way? Did Spiva create this? Who came up with this great? It reminds me of going to a museum and doing like the immersive kind of tour. Who came up with this idea?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is an idea that Spiva came up with. Probably their exhibits director, Sean Conroy. He's very, he's a poet himself and is really a lover of it. So I bet that he came up with this idea. And it's been going strong for years now, and is something that local writers never miss.
Okay, folks, and once again, that's going to be Tuesday, April the 19th, 6 o'clock for the Spiva Center of the Arts. And we're going to cap it all off with National Poetry Month. We're going to cap it all off with National Poem in Your Pocket Day. That's right, Poem in Your Pocket Day, and this is going to take place Thursday the 28th at 7 p.m. at the Joplin Avenue Coffee Company. Do I have to bring a poem in my pocket?
You do not, actually. And this is actually, it does say Joplin Avenue Coffee Company, but that's just one of many locations that these poems will be at. National Poem in Your Pocket Day is basically a day to celebrate poetry and to carry it with you, but you don't have to bring a poem with you. You can find one in Joplin. We have these very cute little poem scrolls that we create, a little basket that we take to all of the local coffee shops, as well as the library and Spiva Center for the Arts. And you just pick one up, you read it, you carry it with you, and maybe share it with someone else along the way.
I think that's so great that you are able to incorporate the entire community in National Poetry Month. And the fact that, folks, if you don't, like Emily said, maybe you're not a poet, and maybe you're apprehensive about getting in front of a microphone, but Connect to Culture steps up and gives us all a way to carry a poem in our pocket on Thursday, April the 28th. Emily, I want to thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for everything that Connect to Culture does.
Well, thank you so much. We love doing it.
And so really fast, before I let you go, can you give us the website information where we can find everything?
Yeah, connect2culture.org, the number 2 in there. And you can always sign up for our emails and receive all of the information about arts, culture, and entertainment every week right to your inbox. And
don't forget, folks, if you're interested in Las Cafeteras concert coming up tomorrow, make sure you check the Connect to Culture website to see if that is going to be inside or outside. Emily Frankowski, we always enjoy talking to you. Can I catch up with you next month?
Absolutely. We'll be here.
Thank you, E. Frank. Always appreciate your time. We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News right after this.
It's time to honor today's four-state hero, Marvin Jackman. Private First Class Marvin Jackman served in the Marines from 1943 to 46. He served in the Marina Islands, located in the Pacific, with the 1st Battalion, 6th Regiment, 2nd Marine Division. During his service, he earned a Purple Heart. A native of Moran, Kansas, we thank you, today's four-state hero, Private First Class Marvin Jackman. An Oregon 3rd grader is being hailed as a hero for his quick thinking, which helped save a choking classmate's life. Spencer Thomas has the story.
The gym right here at Yamhill Carlton Elementary was filled with loud cheers as 3rd grader Taylor Snyder was commemorated for doing the Heimlich maneuver on a classmate who was choking. A little hero who took big action. Take a look.
Okay, Tigers, it is time for our surprise local hero assembly.
As small feet shuffle down the hall. Little do they know, it's to honor a surprise hero among them all.
We are so very thankful that the student got up and helped this other student and jumped into action in this scary situation. I am now going to call up our own hero, Taylor Snyder.
Taylor Snyder, a 3rd grader at Yamhill Carlton Elementary, was enjoying the last day of school before spring break with a popcorn party when all of a sudden he noticed one of his classmates, Scarlett McBee, was choking.
I was eating popcorn, and then when I was finished with it, I was making like a little airbag, and then I didn't know there's like still half of popcorn in it, and then I actually inhaled like really hard, and then the popcorn like swelled down here. I didn't know it was still, so I got shocked, and that's why I got stuck right here.
And before the teacher could get up to help, Taylor sprung into action.
He grabbed me like behind, and then he like put his arms like right here. I went up and I pat on her back really, not so hard but kind of hard, so she could spit it out.
And that's exactly what happened. A few thrusts to the back, and finally, the popcorn kernel went flying in the air, saving her life.
I would say thank you for doing that, because I really have a few things I have to do in my life and stuff that I'm planning to when I get older, and I'm really grateful.
And to thank Taylor for his bravery, an assembly was put together, local first responders in tow, thanking him for his quick actions.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm in disbelief. At first I thought it was one of his, come home from school,
stories, and then got the call from the teacher, and I was like, whoa. Good job, son. Just beyond disbelief and proud of him.
I just want to thank Taylor and his family for being our hero in saving Scarlett.
Certainly an incredible story. We were talking about lifelong friends on KOAM this morning, and I tell you what, if that's not a lifelong friendship that comes out of that, I don't know what is. We've got another half-hour news, weather coming up on the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Many new cars have alerts to make sure you buckle your seatbelts, but some experts say those alerts aren't long enough and can pose their own risks. And if it's Friday, it must be time to level up for the latest Game On package. You're watching KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. We're going to be right back.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. It's currently 7:35. Let's take a look at today's top stories, and we're beginning with breaking news overnight. A person of interest in a Joplin homicide case is dead. Just after 10 last night, Joplin police surrounded a home at 2201 South Empire. Police had received a tip that a person of interest in a homicide case was at this home. After the suspect refused to leave the home, SWAT was called in just after 11. SWAT officers tried to get the person to come out of the home, and just before 1 this morning, smoke was visible from the house, which shortly after turned into flames. The fire department was called, and after the fire was put out, they found the body of a male in the attic space. Captain Davis with JPD says they believe they heard a gunshot just before the fire began. This was the person of interest in a homicide case just 6 blocks away at 2201 South Jackson. The name of the suspect and the victim in yesterday's case have not been released. Today marks the beginning of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So on Thursday, sexual assault nurse examiners at Freeman Health System are distributing some facts and prevention tips. They say data shows rape and sexual assault are the most underreported crimes in the U.S. The nurses also brought up the importance of consent using the acronym FRIES, which stands for Freely Given, Reversible, Informed, Enthusiastic, and Specific.
Be very careful about what they post online about themselves, how much they reveal about themselves, and also that they take anything that they find posted online with a big grain of salt, because you don't really know.
The theme for this year's Sexual Assault Awareness Month is building safe online spaces together. A local business yesterday made a donation to the Ron McDonald House Charities of the 4 states. Over the past few weeks, Alorica employees have been collecting items needed by the charity, like food and household supplies. Thursday, they made a trip to the Ron McDonald House in Joplin to drop the items off.
They do just a wonderful service to the community by housing families that have sick children in both Freeman and Mercy hospitals, and that includes them being able to stay and also eat for free. And when you have a sick kid in the hospital, the last thing you want to worry about are those things.
Alorica hosted a competition as part of the collection drive. A team of employees who collected the most items won a trophy and swag bag. A strawberry milk campaign lands a local student in a national publication. 4th grader Esteban Perez at Anderson Elementary led a campaign last fall to bring back strawberry milk at lunchtime, and it worked. Not too long after, Scholastic news editors heard of his success and decided to feature him, and on Thursday, Esteban's class got to read the article. They also learned that their efforts inspired a California student to protest for the return of chocolate milk at his school. 4th graders learned how one act can make a huge difference.
If you give them the tools, they can do anything, and that they can understand adult topics like petitions.
The student in California was featured in a Washington Post article, which also mentioned McDonald County student efforts as an inspiration. The oldest active park ranger in the National Park Service retired Thursday at the age of 100. Betty Reed Soskin was instrumental in bringing the Rosie the Riveter National Historical Park to Richmond, California. National Park pays tribute to the efforts of American civilians on the home front during World War II. Beyond being a legend within the National Park Service, Soskin has also been a lifelong activist for social justice. As an eyewitness to the Jim Crow era, she became an active participant in the civil rights struggle of the 60s. Her fight for equal rights got special recognition when she was embraced by America's first African-American president, Barack Obama. While her last day on the job was Thursday, the park she helped create will throw a retirement party for her on April the 16th.
Sounds like she deserves a retirement. My
I
goodness.
think so. I'd like to think that I could still be working at age 100. I tell you who is. I know exactly who's going to be retiring at age 100.
Who's that?
Our very own Dow Quick. The man is ageless. The man is timeless. He's going to be in here at 100 years old. He's going to look just like he does
I was
now.
gonna say,
and then he's going to just finally say, you know, after 70 years of doing the news here at KOM, I think I'm going to take a vacation. But we've still got, what, another 40, 50 years before we reach that point.
Bless, well, I don't want to think about that. We're going to miss him when he does. At 100.
Oh, we certainly will. But we've got plenty of time. Nobody at home misinterpret what we're saying as Dow Quick's retired.
No, we're saying he's not going anywhere.
He's not. We're saying he's not for at least another 40 years or so. So don't worry.
Let's get a little bit of a warm-up on our hands. We are due for it. Come on now, sunshine. Do your job because our freeze warning's still hanging around until 9 a.m. No worries on the Skywatch Storm Tracker. We're going to have a glorious looking afternoon. We just need to get above that freezing mark as we sit at 31 right now in Joplin. Eventually this afternoon, we'll kick into the 50s around the noon hour, 60s later on this afternoon. Do not forget, we do have a little rain formulate. If you're going to be out late on a Friday night, I'd take an umbrella, but it's going to come and go. Scattered at most. No lightning, no thunder to worry about. So that's a positive. Out of here by mid-Saturday morning. Saturday and Sunday morning and afternoon looking great. And then Sunday night, we begin a week of instability that's going to bring us not only thunderstorms, a little bit of a wet beginning to April right there. At least our temperatures maintain the 60s. Be back with more KOM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this. This morning on the KOM News Now Insta Poll, we're talking fun and friendship. Everyday rain or shine, Lou Klein, little man right there, waits for his friend to show up. Lou's mom, Carolyn, says her 3.5-year-old has social anxiety. And his world has been pretty much indoors because, remember, kid of the pandemic. One thing he's comfortable with, though, garbage trucks. He's a big fan of the show on Netflix called Trash Truck. And to get him outside and whatnot, well, he became friends with his own neighborhood trash man. There he is, Rich Rosales. And so now every day, the two get together and they've formed what's going to be for Lou is a lifelong friendship. Our question for you this morning, do you have any lifelong friends?
We're lifelong friends.
Right there.
He didn't even know I was here.
I did. Because when we're talking about friendship, I expected you to be by my side.
I am always by your side. It's
Remember,
really dark right here, too.
Remember what Dion and Elton and Stevie taught us. That's what friends are for.
Exactly.
Our question for you this morning.
I'm going to break your center.
Split right down the middle. 50% say yes, you have some lifelong friends. 50% say no. It's a common theme whenever Chris Warner's here. For some reason, we just split our polls in half. And it only happens when Chris is here. That's the crazy thing about it.
I swear people are they're calling their friends and stuff and saying, hey, I just voted, so make sure you vote the other side so we can keep this balance.
Make sure it doesn't sway.
That's what they're doing. They're
we
messing with me.
Making sure we have the scales of justice right when Chris is here. All right, turn our attention now to a Fox show that's become somewhat of a hit. It is indeed the Masked Singer. Second round of performances revealing a legendary supermodel and actress hiding behind one of those costumes. We bring in the great Ashley Dvorkin.
Christy Brinkley was unmasked as the lemur on Wednesday night's episode of Fox's The Masked Singer. She was among a new crop of disguised contestants that took the stage to perform, but was the first one to go home from her group after earning the least amount of votes.
I was just sorry that happened because I really did enjoy it, and we did practice a lot of songs. When I see your face.
The legendary model and actress had a feeling she would be booted once she started her performance.
I knew halfway down the runway that it was probably going to be me that was going to be eliminated because I could feel my act falling apart.
Wearing an ornate animal costume wasn't the only reason why she struggled to perform.
I had had food poisoning the night before, so I had been up all night, and I was weak and depleted to begin with. But then I had to strap on my big tail, which it looked light and fluffy, but it was actually more like a telephone pole strapped to my back with straps all over my body to hold it up. And then my big old head and my tail were constantly competing with each other up there. So my tail would whack my head, it would spin it around, and then I'd be blinded.
Brinkley says it was fun while it lasted and was happy to be a part of the show.
Overall, it was really great. I was thrilled to be asked. I love an opportunity. I think it's the greatest privilege to have a chance to make people smile.
I feel the sky tumbling down. In Hollywood, Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
Take that, Billy Joel. Be back with some consumer news right after this.
Seatbelts save lives. And new cars are equipped with alerts for drivers and passengers to buckle up. But a new report finds many of those alerts are not loud or long enough. Laura Podesta reports.
In this crash test video, the driver is wearing a seatbelt, but the backseat passenger is not and slams into the front seat, then is tossed to the roof. Government data shows in 2019, almost half of people killed in car accidents were not wearing a seatbelt.
The seatbelt is the most important safety feature that a vehicle has.
David Harkey is the president of the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety and says under current federal standards, seatbelt reminders only need to last a few seconds.
Our goal is to go well beyond the federal standards. We want to push that audible and visual signal to last 90 seconds and for it to be loud enough, let's call it a more annoying warning, that would get drivers to buckle up their seatbelt.
The IIHS also wants a visual reminder for backseat passengers. With that criteria in mind, the group tested 26 SUVs and only 2, the Subaru Forester and Subaru Ascent, received a good rating. 12 others were given an acceptable or marginal grade.
And almost half get a poor rating.
IIHS research shows persistent alerts can increase seatbelt use up to 34%.
Most of the changes that we're talking about with making these audible changes is software. And so it's not a hardware change. And so we think most of the automakers will be able to make this change quickly.
Harkey says those changes could save around 1,500 lives a year. Laura Podesta, CBS News, New York.
I do have to say real quick, we have all these fancy sensors, but we still don't have one that tells you your tail light's out. You'd think we'd be able to figure that one out. Anyway, we're going to be right back more after this. But hey, first, here's a look at market prices before the opening bell.
New month and a new batch of video games headed your way. Our man Rick Demigella previews a quartet of titles.
You've served your purpose well.
The galaxy far, far away goes portable as Star Wars The Force Unleashed arrives on the Nintendo Switch, putting players in the role of Darth Vader's secret apprentice. The Force Unleashes April 20th. Batter up! MLB The Show throws out its first pitch April 5th on Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox consoles. Cat fanciers can build their own kitty corner in Cat Cafe Manager. Gameplay includes building a restaurant, solving a mystery, and of course, adopting friendly felines. The cat's out of the bag April 14th for PC and Nintendo Switch. Happy's Humble Burger Farm could be the origin of the first-person adventure horror cooking game genre. Players must work the graveyard shift at a popular fast food joint where things can go very, very wrong. The burgers hit the grill for Nintendo Switch April 7th. Leveling up in Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
Okay, and did anybody notice there's a raccoon mixed in with the cats? We'll be back with more KOAM Morning News on Fox 14 right after this.
Welcome back to the KOAM Morning News on Fox 14. Here's what's happening today. President Biden trying to take some of the sting out of filling up your gas tank. The president is authorizing the release of 1 million barrels of oil per day from the nation's Strategic Petroleum Reserve for 6 months. The hope is it'll bring down high gasoline prices created in part by sanctions on Russia. Ukraine says it destroyed a number of Russian tanks near Kyiv while Russian forces pounded the suburbs of the capital city. President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia is blocking humanitarian corridors intended to let civilians leave the devastated southern port city of Mariupol. As Vladimir Putin's war stretches into a second month, The Russian leader authorized the draft of another nearly 135,000 new conscripts. And in South Carolina, a 12-year-old student was killed and a 12-year-old classmate was taken into custody following a shooting at a Greenville middle school. The school was placed on temporary lockdown. Now, here's Michael with that forecast.
Still very chilly outside. Wind chills in the 20s right now. We'll eventually get to 50 around the noon hour. And then as we get ready for later tonight, a little scattered rain moving through, but a nice looking Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon until we get to the 70s there on Sunday.
A visitor, look at this guy, on a weather cam gaining some fame. It happened in Great Falls, Montana. The owl came and said hello on a weather cam. See, there he is. He's saying hello. Sometimes the camera catches spiders, a moth, or maybe even a different kind of bird. But this owl just couldn't resist checking out the camera. We have issues with bees and spiders in Joplin.
And every now and then a good bird matrix when I can get them to gather and then turn it really fast. Thanks for letting us put the good in your morning. More news and weather when we see you at noon.